At the annual meeting, 2 days offsite, one of the things besides just the annual and the review of the big picture, you also want to set the first quarterly or the next quarterly rocks. By rocks, I mean, I guess it came from Stephen Covey. So the idea is that big rocks are the most important projects, the things that are really going to make the difference. And little rocks and sand are things that don't really matter most of the time at all. Like they're unimportant. So if you're trying to get big rocks, little rocks, and sand into a jar, Stephen Covey demonstrated this. You can go to YouTube, you can look at this. If you do what most people do, which is fill their time, like the sands of time in a old style sand timer, you put the sand in first and then the little rocks. You can't put the most important thing in. Your big rocks don't fit. So by prioritizing and doing the most important projects, your big rocks, putting them in your jar of time first, you can then put little rocks in the sand around them and it all fits into the available time. So the quarterly meetings deal with what are the important milestones, rocks, projects, what are the deliverables that move us towards the annual goal and the 3-year goal and the big picture. By measuring what we're doing this next quarter and must get done, everybody gets into that mantra. We're focused quarterly, and then you break it down into monthly. There's 3 months in a quarter, and then there's usually 4 weeks every month. So you just dial those in other meetings. Well, actually, you don't do it in that meeting. The quarterly meeting is directly focused on getting those big rocks set for that quarter and identifying what you're going to do within the next couple of months that make up that quarter and what the big issues are. So it's just getting a high level clarity of we're on track. Have any of these priorities or rocks changed? If we could only get one done, they have to be, again, prioritized because sometimes things have to give. And that's the hardest thing. If somebody says, well, how can I pick between this priority or that priority? It's kind of like picking between my children who I love most. And I don't. I love them the same. In business, you can't. You must choose one thing over another. Otherwise, people don't know what's important. It's the choosing of a priority over one that brings clarity to the organization. And yes, it's hard. So I get asked, what makes a really good rock? Well, quite frankly, it's like a SMART goal. Specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time dated. So if you make sure that your rocks are SMART, it's essentially just a bigger goal that, of course, like every goal, could be broken down into subparts, but you're not worried about that. That's other people will come up with the plans. You're saying, I want this thing done by this date within this type of spec. So it needs to tie, it's any good plan. If that rock happens, and is accomplished, it's move you closer to the goal for the year. So a simple one could be if you wanted to have growing sales and you wanted to have 10 million of sales this next year, and you divided that by 4, you'd say, well, I want 2.5 million per quarter. But of course you want growth. So the first quarter is probably going to be like 2 million, and then it's going to increase to get to the last quarter, which the total would make 10 because clearly 10 should have been a stretch goal for the year. A bad rock, setting up people do set them, is that it's unspecific or people can't see how it ties to the goal. And so if you have a big rock that is no good relationship to the annual or 3-year goal or something that's important, it makes no sense. And then people feel discouraged. One of the questions I get asked a lot is about time. How many meetings are there and why do we want to go to another meeting? My system actually replaces most of your other meetings, so it's going to buy you time in almost all instances, because most meetings are a waste of time. Patrick Lencioni has a great book on death by meeting, and he actually has a really good suggestion for the way you should run your meetings. Part of my ideas came from that book. However, we all stand on the shoulders of those who came before us, so I've leveraged a lot of this knowledge from other people's books and work and synthesized it into a tighter message, in my opinion. Now, Why take the time to go offsite for 2 days and 1 day a quarter? And how do you make sure people aren't wasting time in the meeting? Well, you have to have an agenda, first of all. Two, you have to be talking about the most important stuff and you have to get done. So you have to be on the clock. Good to have a meeting moderator who's watching the agenda and the time, and you just must finish. Wrap it up. Whatever you've been talking about, it's better to have 20% of the solution that gets you 80% of the results, the Pareto principle, than to try to go for perfection and not get anything done more than the first thing that you talk forever. So our Groom problem-solving system brings things to a head. They get done quickly and they are either resolved or there's an action to do more research. That's how you stay on time, is you stay disciplined to the agenda, and you usually benefit from having a meeting moderator. Then you get through these meetings. The same with the once a week meeting for 90 minutes replaces a ton of other meetings. In fact, I would advocate, and do advocate, that outside of the set meetings that go in our system, anybody else that wants a meeting has to fill out a specific memo explaining why they need an ad hoc meeting, and exactly there's a specific format to it. I have been asked a few times, hey, Pierre, really, how important is accountability in this whole system? Well, I would say that it's either the single most important thing to high performance or it's the second, only to setting a goal. So if you're not clear on where you want to go, it's hard to hold anybody accountable. But once you've established what the goals are, accountability is everything, starting with ourselves. How do I hold myself accountable? How do I hold my peers, direct reports accountable? And how do I make sure they're holding everybody else accountable? I don't call it a responsibility chart or an org chart. I call it an accountability chart. Why? Because it's so important to know what people are responsible for, accountable for. They must understand they're here to solve problems. They're here to get this kind of work done, and they are being held accountable to it. So accountable, 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 accountable. It is the most important thing. The entire systems I have are designed around accountability in a way that makes it fun, not onerous. It's not like the double entendre word we use with our kids, consequences. Like for most everybody, consequences just sound like a really bad thing. There are good consequences too. The good consequence of holding people accountable is that they get to celebrate more money. And forget the money. I mean, you give people money, they spend it. They can't even remember they got it. What they want are memories. And what people really, really want is to belong to a winning team. Being a part of a winning organization, whatever it is. I mean, some team like Kansas City Chiefs keep winning the Super Bowl. They get more fans because people want to be tied to a winner. If they keep winning, I want to belong to that. That's part of the mentality that a lot of people have. And who doesn't want to be on a winning team? I mean, really. So to create that level of fun, you create accountability. And that's what great teams do. For certain, Kansas City Chiefs have a whole system of accountability. And every great organization that wins, it is centered around accountability. Using a system of both annual planning and the quarterly pulse meetings is one of the lynchstones to keeping your entire team, whether they're high contributors or not, to keep them loyalty and aligned. Those meetings are the essential foundation for that retention of your most expensive investment you have in your company. And most of us, our single biggest expense on our P&L is payroll, employee related. Payroll, bonus, the commission we pay the government for the right to hire people, and benefits, 401k, all this other stuff. Like for a lot of businesses, it's 1/3 to 50% of their entire expense structure. So when you've got that much dedicated to it, you want to focus on it and think, how do I get the most out of these people? It's productivity. Without having clarity on where you want them to go as an organization, where you and we and the team to go, they're not going to feel that tied to anything. So to build loyalty, you want to have this incredible sense of, this is a fun, compelling, exciting place we're going. And I have a leadership team that's so clear on what it is that matters, what we're focused on, and how we're going to get there, that I know we're going to get there. I have faith in my management team, so I'm going to stick around because I want to be on a winning team. That's why the annual and quarterly meetings are so importantly tied to employee alignment, engagement, and loyalty. I'd love to read your comments as to what strategies and systems keep your team aligned with quarterly and annual priorities.